Hi, welcome back. Oh, welcome back. So today, in preparation for our discussion, we're talking about a few job offers, but you're not going to get the job offers until discussion. We're going to talk about all the other stuff that goes along with job offers, though. And I want to say this before we get too far into this. Down economies still offer plenty of choices. Things change fast. You're likely going to get plenty of different work offers at various stages of your career, and you might even be recruited from wherever you happen to be working now. You might have a lot of offers coming in at once. And then your real problem is, how do I make a good choice? Well, that's why we're talking about choices so much this term and this year, is because it's one of the hardest things to do correctly. But I want to put this note in here as well, too. Like, your first job, in many ways, your first, big job, or whatever you want to call it, or your next job maybe, is really about building skills, okay? And it's going to lead to where you're going to build those dreams, right? Sometimes you don't get to job 2 until you've done job 1 first. Keep that in mind. And as you navigate your workplace, you're going to decide exactly what that workplace is going to look like. So, a few points here to begin with. Employee compensation and benefits. Here's what might go into that offer. So we know that pay is structured, generally very clearly in some sectors and then very vaguely or confusingly in other ways, right? But typically, you should be getting paid for the work that you do, or you should not be working in that scenario. That pay could come in the form of wages, right? Paying by the hour. It could come in the form of salary, which is paying by the year, effectively. And then all benefits and everything that becomes associated with that, we're going to break down as we go a little bit today. Typically, as you have more responsibility or more management, your pay will go up as well, although sadly that's not a guarantee. And if it's not happening, then it's probably time to be looking around a little bit, which again we'll get to at the end of this term. Jobs of equal importance, as far as HR is concerned, tend to be compensated at similar rates. But there's also external influences, right? Those are the ones that are kind of internal to the organization you work at. But there's also external influences that will change your pay rate potentially, or the possibility of what your pay level could be at. They might look at competitors' wages as well when they make decisions, because a good firm wants to keep you. It doesn't want to push you out so you make more money somewhere else, right? They want your experience and knowledge base to stay here. So they may look around, and say, oh, other people are getting this, let's make you a better offer. You'll also look at things like geography, job position. Are you working here? Are you working from home? Are you working in a high cost of living area, low cost? All that kind of stuff can go into deciding what compensation will look like with a job offer. The direct compensation you get, the simplest form, is again wages or salary. The indirect compensation is going to be benefits and services, whatever perks go along with working at this place. Base pay is your hourly rate or your monthly salary typically. And incentive pay is commission-based, right? So it's bonuses, profit sharing, any money that's coming not directly promised to you, but as some form of other compensation that may or may not be repeated in the future. And all those things can serve as motivators. Again, we'll talk about job motivation later this term as well. It's not all about money, although money is obviously a key part of it. For example, maybe you get a commission pay structure offered to you. Maybe you're doing some kind of sales or something like that, and depending on how much you sell, get more money back, right? Bonuses might be paid out for reaching annual performance goals, or cost-saving goals. It really just depends on what's available, what's important to you, and what's important to your employer. Profit sharing could also be part of your offer, although it's not all that common, especially in offers coming straight out of college. But it could be something to look for down the road potentially. You, at this stage, would be receiving some of the firm's profits, right? Typically, you're going to be getting shares that are based on how the company is doing. Whether or not that factors in the decision you make about choosing a job is really up to you, right? Indirect pay requirements. Well, it could include things like pensions as well, right? Or sort of retirement money, health insurance, vacation time, all that stuff. But there's only a few types of indirect pay that are required by law. There's unemployment compensation, which is where your employer does need to put some money into a fund for society so that if they decide to shove you out on the street, you can still collect some money until you find your next job. They also have to pay into the workers' compensation fund, so if you get injured on the job, you will hopefully get some benefit from that. And Social Security, both you and your employer have to pay into, right? So you pay your FICA taxes, Social Security, Medicaid, so that down the road someday, hopefully, you'll be able to withdraw some of that as you live happily ever after in retirement, which we'll get to later this year. So unemployment compensation gives you some money if you're unemployed. Depends on how much time you've worked and how much you've earned. And it does depend on continuing to look for work, right? You can't really just sit around for 6 months. You need to be continuing to look for a job, right? Which you'd be doing anyway because you're motivated. Workers' compensation pays out if you get a work-related injury on the job, right? Like you can't just get injured, in your car randomly, and that's not workers' compensation coverage. And Social Security down there, it's our classic government pension plan. It also provides disability and survivor benefits, not just retirement. And we'll talk more about that at a later time, so just keep it on your radar. Also, so when you're getting these offers, you have to remember that everything is negotiable. It doesn't mean everything will be negotiated. It just means like there's nothing that's really completely off the table. And we'll revisit this in a couple of weeks when we talk about negotiating in a broader sense. But I do want to kind of, present that here a little bit early on and just say that just because a written offer looks like this or a verbal offer sounds like this doesn't mean that is what you will end up with permanently, right? It's nice if they give you a great offer to start with. Just know that things are negotiable, right? Your total compensation is going to be your base salary plus all the value of all the other stuff that you're getting. And you want to also keep that in mind before you plunge too far into negotiation, right? Because if I just looked at the base salary of the work that I do, I might say, oh, yeah, that feels kind of undervalued, right? But if I'm looking at all the other compensation, like, for example, retirement plan and the health care and, tuition discount and whatever else, right? I'm like, that's not so bad, is it? Your base salary, again, is something that, is the easiest thing that they're going to hand you that is going to be clear to process. Would you negotiate that number? It depends, right? Maybe you could negotiate something else, though, too, even if you're not comfortable necessarily saying, I want more money. It's hard to say that, even if we do. But we could say, like, well, maybe I want to negotiate how frequently there's an increase to that base pay, or how frequently I get a performance review that could lead to an increase salary. So it's not just a question of saying, like, can you give me more money, right? Like, there are other ways to ask for what you need. Bonuses are sort of similar. Maybe they're going to offer you a bonus to start or to move, or maybe they offer quarterly or year-end bonuses or something like that. But maybe you could negotiate what these are going to be based on, right? Like, what targets do I actually have to hit? Maybe I can make it a little more feasible to hit that target. And commissions, can I be sure that I'm going to get this money if it's commission? And I think a lot of this is going to depend, again, on like your own confidence level with the work that you're going to be doing. But if you're not super experienced or confident in the work that's ahead of you, you got to be careful putting too much money into potential bonuses and commissions and neglecting base salary, because the base salary is going to be the sure thing. The others are going to be maybe not so certain. Okay? You could also negotiate for company stock potentially, maybe in some scenarios. But coming out of college, again, if this is going to be your first professional job, that might be harder to do, right? But down the road, potentially, there could be a reason to look into that. Stock options could be out there. Maybe they offer it to you automatically. Maybe a startup is going to be really generous. Potentially they're going to look at your experience and say, yeah, we want you here. We'll do it. There's stock options versus stock grants. Just kind of know the difference if you are offered these things. And notice especially if there's a vesting schedule, which means I need to be here this long to get this full value, because that could be relevant potentially, especially if I'm in a job where I realize very quickly I don't want to stay here. Right. Retirement accounts like 401k or 403b could be offered to you as a way to save. The great thing about this is, again, you get a tax benefit to doing this, to putting money into it each year. And some employers might make it an even better benefit by matching the dollars that you put in, potentially dollar for dollar, or maybe 50% of what you put in, or whatever it is. Or maybe they'll say, up to this level, we'll match the first 3% you put in and give you half of the next 1.5%, or something like that. And there are some stipulations, and if you withdraw early, you can be taxed and fined and all that. But the bottom line is, planning for your future is going to become really important. We're going to talk about this later in the year. If you are offered a 401k or 403b or equivalent as part of your job, especially if the company is willing to put some money in there on your behalf, you should probably take it, right? Definitely like put money into that account. But you really want to also understand the details, right? So ask for the details, right? Ask for the information from HR. Talk to people about it. Don't get into something you don't know about, and don't neglect to start a retirement account because you're not sure if it's valuable or not. It's always 99.99% of the time it's valuable, okay? Speaking of retirement, most common retirement options break down in a couple of ways. There's defined contribution plans, which are employer sponsored, which means it's like a 401k or something, right? Like I put in money, that money, I choose where it's going to be invested, and that money grows, and then someday I can pull it out. And along the way, the employer hopefully threw in some money too, or at least sponsored it. Typical options, like we said, 401k or 403b. 401k is for private employers. 403b is for public employers. That's the big difference. Otherwise, very similar. Negotiable non-cash components of an offer are also out there, right? So maybe you get a job offer and you say, what about benefits, right? I'm interested in money, yes, but benefits I would also like to have. And some benefits you can actually take with you to another place. That's like portability, right? So maybe your retirement is portable and you can move it to another place. If not, you can always get your money out of that and put it into another plan of the future. So it's not a huge deal, but it is nice sometimes to be able to take stuff with you. You could get benefits involving healthcare, dental, insurance of other sorts, disability and education benefits, for example. These are some of the big ones that might be offered to you as part of a job offer. Healthcare benefits could include elder care even, child care, adoption benefits. They could go far beyond simply like health insurance, right? You should be offering health insurance unless it's a very tiny company that you work at, but it could go beyond that. Dental insurance, maybe some of them will cover just a part of it, some of them will cover quite a bit. Other insurance, like travel insurance, could be something valuable to you depending on what the job involves, right? If I'm always on the road, I would probably want to make sure that I've got a good setup for that situation. Disability insurance, we'll talk about this more probably in the spring, actually, but it can be sometimes hard to imagine, why do I need this? I will always be able in the way that I am able right now. It's like, well, will you though? Will you? Education benefits, maybe they'll contribute to tuition or pay your way through specific programs to get you certain training. Sometimes they have partnerships with schools. All these things, can vary and they're not always offered, but it's nice to kind of get an idea of like, what is out there for me if I decide to commit to this company? What will they commit to me? You can also keep in mind start dates, right? Some companies will be flexible on this, but maybe that could be something to negotiate if you feel like, well, I really want to finish up what I'm doing now before I begin this next big chapter of my life. Maybe I need a couple of months or whatever it is. Maybe you can negotiate paid versus unpaid leave to some extent, depending on their situation and what it is that they already pay for, and what they will offer you as far as vacation, sick time. Lifestyle and flexibility negotiation could happen. A lot of folks are trying to move towards telecommuting or working from home, or at least partially working from home. Some people are looking for 4-day work schedules. This is something where maybe I'm going to an employer and they say, I can't give you more money at this point, right? Like this is what it is. This is what I have to work with. And you can say, well, that's great, but is it possible that I could work from home a day a week to kind of, offset that and help me have a little bit more flexible time when I'm working? And they might say, sure, because it's not costing them anything, right? So maybe that's more negotiable. Could be other employee perks. Maybe they'll give you cell phone plan or something like that. Who knows? The thing is, if they do give you a cell phone plan, they'll probably expect you to answer it, so that could be a blessing and a curse. Outplacement services and severance pay. If you're working for a pretty large company, it could be possible that you get help. You get downsized, right? You get cut out, you get laid off. Maybe they're going to offer you some severance. If a merger happens, that kind of thing. Just keep in mind, none of this stuff is guaranteed unless it's in the contract. But again, you could negotiate for that to be in the contract if it was important to you. So kind of rounding this out a little bit as we head towards a discussion is what makes a great place to work? Well, glad you asked. The Great Places to Work Institute, I wonder if it's nice to work at that place. They report that the key components of a great workplace is having trust between managers and employees. And I personally would agree with that. I think that's absolutely essential. Employees want to work where they can, quote, trust the people they work with, have pride in what they do, and enjoy the people they work with. Okay, so 3 big things. And they're motivated to work when they're challenged, respected, treated fairly, and appreciated. Yeah, it makes sense. Kind of like students, right? It's like when a teacher, appreciates you, treats you fairly, you feel a little more like, I guess I don't hate this as much as I thought I did. Job redesign can also be a factor in sort of keeping you interested at work. And again, it could be something to negotiate for down the road, potentially. Employees tend to spend about 2,000 hours a year at work, according to the text. How are you going to stay engaged during all that time? Well, job redesign is a way, sort of a general policy of trying to keep jobs interesting by moving them around, right? Or rearranging what that job looks like within its own setting. Job rotation is kind of similar. This is where you're actually doing multiple different jobs in sequence and kind of cycling back to your original work at some point. The nice thing about this is getting cross-trained in that way means that you can probably do a lot more jobs, either at present, but hopefully not, or in the future. Maybe you find out I'd rather move into this other direction down the road. And job enlargement is where you're getting more work to do. So that's terrible. And then job enrichment is when you're getting more tasks added that increase your responsibility and offer you ways to grow. So a little bit more positive than just getting more stuff dumped on you of the same skill level. This is more of a way of helping you grow. So avoid job enlargement, but look out for job enrichment opportunities. They might not be the worst thing in the world. Work-life quality is also something that you're ultimately going to be negotiating. Maybe not when you get a job offer, but just you personally, you're going to have to decide, what am I going to be investing my time in? What's worth it to me as I go forward in this job? Flex time might be something you look into, right? Like when can I come in and leave? And is there some kind of possibility of mixing that up a little bit? Maybe I'm looking for a more compressed work week, like working 4 days instead of 5 and still getting my hours in. Maybe there'll be some kind of point in my life where a part-time job would make a lot more sense than a full-time job, right? Especially if I have a family or if I have other commitments that are important to me. Job sharing would be a piece that you might look into, potentially negotiating. Maybe if it's something where there's a position, but there are 2 people who want to be half-time and could do that job. That's a possibility, especially down the road, right? That'd be a hard one to lead with, but it could be something to bring up if that interests you. And telecommuting or working from home regularly can save you a lot of money potentially in commuting. It can save you a lot of hassle and headaches in commuting. And again, it shouldn't cost your employer all that much, so it could be something worth negotiating. Family-friendly programs also exist for some corporations. Like, for example, the accounting firm KPMG will offer alternative work arrangements to their workers where they allow for a lot more flexible work potentially for those with families. They want to keep their people. They don't want to run them out to some other place, so they're willing to work with them. There might be offers of dependent care, so maybe you could have child care on site or support with child care, especially if you have like a young kid at home. That can really help you grow your career while not feeling like you have to choose between that and your family. And then paid parental leave. Maybe you can extend that beyond the minimum. Maybe you can get a little more time, especially if you have a newborn or newly adopted child. Caring for yourself, is that something you can negotiate? Well, you can, but probably shouldn't negotiate it too much, right? Paid time off. Well, paid time off is pretty important. Some places will let you mix and match, right? Take a vacation time, some offer unlimited time off, but just keep in mind if nobody at your organization takes time off, it might be difficult for you to do that. If you're working while you have kids, your work is going to be stressful in some ways. If you're working while single, it's going to be stressful in other ways, right? Some individuals find it hard to balance work when dealing with all that other life stuff, like having a family, and others feel frustrated because all the work ends up getting dumped on them, or their schedules change a lot. Nobody likes that, right? So keep all these things in mind as we head to discussion this week. We'll talk about what those offers might look like in the near future. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.